Across the galaxy, the Galactic Empire was synonymous with absolute power. For centuries, its reach extended to every corner of the known universe, its grip tightening with each passing year. The Empire's military might was unparalleled, a colossal force that could crush any opposition with a single decisive strike. Entire civilizations had been brought to their knees, their cultures erased, their peoples subjugated or exterminated. The mere mention of the Empire was enough to instill fear, a cold dread that echoed across star systems. It was a fear born of understanding that resistance was futile, that no species, no matter how advanced or numerous, could stand against the Empire's relentless march. One by one, those who had dared to oppose were silenced, leaving behind only cautionary tales of their annihilation. The galaxy had learned to submit, to bow before the inevitable, for the alternative was too horrifying to contemplate. In this vast and oppressive galactic landscape, humanity remained largely unnoticed. Earth, a relatively small and unremarkable planet, had managed to stay on the fringes of galactic politics. The human race, though technologically capable, was not considered a significant player in the grand scheme of things. The Empire saw them as little more than a curiosity, a backwater species with limited influence, content to remain isolated on their blue planet. For years, humanity had quietly thrived in this isolation, advancing their technology and exploring their solar system while avoiding the attention of the greater galactic powers. This strategy of low visibility had served them well, keeping them safe from the conflicts and power struggles that plagued the rest of the galaxy. While other civilizations were crushed under the Empire's boot, humanity watched from a distance, hoping to stay unnoticed, to avoid the fate that had befallen so many others. But the Empire's hunger for control knew no bounds. As it continued to expand, pushing further into uncharted territories, it inevitably began to encroach on Earth's domain. The quiet tension grew as humanity became increasingly aware of the looming threat. Diplomatic channels were cautiously opened, with Earth's leaders attempting to negotiate a peaceful coexistence, offering trade and cooperation in hopes of avoiding conflict. The Empire, however, had no interest in diplomacy with what it considered an insignificant species. To them, humanity was just another obstacle to be swept aside in their quest for total domination. The negotiations, fraught with anxiety and fear, went nowhere. The Empire's representatives made it clear that Earth's resources, its strategic location, and its people were now part of the Empire's territory, whether humanity liked it or not. Finally, the ultimatum came: submit or be destroyed. The message was delivered with the cold efficiency that the Empire was known for, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Humanity had reached a crossroads. The choice was stark and unforgiving: bow to the Empire's will and become another enslaved species, or take a stand and risk annihilation. For the first time, humanity was forced to confront the reality that they could no longer remain on the sidelines. The threat that had loomed in the distance was now at their doorstep, demanding a response. The time for quiet isolation was over. The time for action had arrived. In the halls of Earth's highest councils, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on the minds of its leaders. The ultimatum from the Galactic Empire had ignited a fierce debate, one that was as much about the survival of their species as it was about their values. Around the table, voices clashed, each representing a different perspective on how to respond to the looming threat. Some argued for submission, pointing out the Empire's overwhelming military superiority. They believed that resistance was not only futile but would lead to the complete destruction of Earth and its people. To them, survival, even under subjugation, was preferable to total annihilation. They cited the countless civilizations that had been obliterated for defying the Empire, emphasizing that humanity's chances were slim to none. On the other side of the debate were those who refused to bow. These leaders, military strategists, and visionaries argued that submission was not an option. They believed that the essence of humanity, its spirit, its freedom, was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. They pointed out that throughout history, humans had overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges by sheer willpower and ingenuity. To them, the choice was clear: it was better to die on their feet than live on their knees. The discussion was intense, with both sides presenting valid points, but as the hours wore on, the weight of the decision began to settle. In the end, it wasn't just about survival. It was about preserving their way of life, their right to self-determination, and the legacy they would leave for future generations. After much deliberation, the decision was made. Humanity would fight. The resolve was born not out of confidence, but out of necessity. The leaders understood the odds. They were acutely aware that they were up against a force that had crushed entire civilizations with ease. Yet, they also knew that surrendering without a fight would mean the end of everything they had built, everything they stood for. The choice to resist was driven by a deep-seated desire to protect their home, their families, and their freedom. It was a decision steeped in the understanding that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, and that victory was far from guaranteed. But it was also a decision rooted in hope. The hope that their defiance might inspire others, that their fight might be the spark that ignites a greater resistance across the galaxy. With the decision made, preparations for war began immediately. Earth's military forces, though limited compared to the Empire's vast armadas, were mobilized. Soldiers were called to duty, factories were repurposed for the production of weapons and supplies, and the entire population was rallied behind the cause. Propaganda campaigns were launched to bolster morale, with messages of unity and resistance broadcast across every medium. The leaders knew that conventional warfare would be suicide. Instead, they turned to unconventional strategies, drawing on humanity's history of guerrilla tactics and asymmetrical warfare. They studied the Empire's strengths and weaknesses, identifying potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited. The focus was on using the terrain to their advantage, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could respond, and employing psychological warfare to sow confusion and fear among the Empire's ranks. The first strike came swiftly and decisively. In a carefully planned operation, a small but elite force of human soldiers launched a surprise attack on a vulnerable supply line deep within the Empire's territory. Using guerrilla tactics honed over centuries, they struck hard and fast, disabling key infrastructure before melting away into the shadows. The operation was a success, sending a clear message to the Empire. Humanity was not going to go quietly into the night. The attack, though small in scale, marked the beginning of a resistance that would grow stronger with each passing day. It was a bold move that took the Empire by surprise, challenging their perception of humanity as a minor, inconsequential species. The battle for Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, had begun. Humanity's decision to resist the Galactic Empire set the stage for a new kind of warfare, one that the Empire was ill-prepared to face. Drawing on centuries of history and the harsh lessons of survival on Earth, human military strategists turned to guerrilla tactics as their primary method of engagement. These tactics, honed through countless conflicts on their home planet, were designed to exploit the Empire's weaknesses and level the playing field. Small, mobile units of soldiers launched hit-and-run attacks on isolated Imperial outposts and supply lines, striking swiftly before disappearing into the environment. They used the terrain to their advantage, hiding in the shadows of asteroids, utilizing the cover of dense nebulae, and leveraging the unpredictable conditions of uncharted planets. Sabotage became a key weapon in their arsenal, with human operatives infiltrating Imperial installations to plant explosives or disrupt communications. The Empire, used to direct confrontations and overwhelming firepower, found itself chasing a phantom enemy that refused to engage on traditional terms. These unconventional tactics began to yield early victories, small in scale but enormous in impact. A supply convoy, essential to the Empire's operations in a distant sector, was ambushed and destroyed by a human strike force. The loss, though minor by the Empire's standards, caused significant delays in their military campaign. In another instance, a critical communications hub was rendered inoperable by a coordinated sabotage effort, leaving an entire fleet cut off from central command. These victories were not about inflicting massive casualties or capturing territory. They were about disrupting the Empire's operations, forcing them to react rather than advance. Each success boosted the morale of the human population, who had braced themselves for the worst but now saw glimmers of hope. The Empire, for the first time, began to take notice of the humans not as a minor nuisance, but as a legitimate threat. Realizing that their usual methods were ineffective, the Empire escalated its efforts to crush the rebellion. They deployed additional forces, sending more ships and troops to hunt down the elusive human resistance. The Empire's commanders, frustrated by their inability to engage the enemy directly, began to adopt harsher measures, targeting civilian populations in an attempt to force humanity into submission. This escalation led to a series of increasingly intense confrontations, as the Empire sought to stamp out the rebellion once and for all. However, these efforts only served to galvanize the human resistance further. The more the Empire pressed, the more determined the humans became to resist. They adapted quickly to the Empire's tactics, constantly evolving their strategies to stay one step ahead. The battles grew fiercer, but humanity's resolve only strengthened. As the conflict continued, a sense of rising confidence began to spread among the human ranks. The early victories, combined with their ability to evade and frustrate a far superior enemy, led to a growing belief that they might actually have a chance. What had started as a desperate fight for survival began to feel like a legitimate resistance movement. The idea that they could not only defend Earth but inspire others across the galaxy to rise up against the Empire started to take root. Humanity, once isolated and overlooked, now saw itself as a beacon of hope for the oppressed species living under the Empire's rule. This newfound confidence didn't just bolster their spirits, it fueled their determination to continue the fight, no matter the cost. The possibility of victory, however distant, was enough to keep them going. The seeds of rebellion were being sown, and the Empire was beginning to realize that they were facing something far more formidable than they had anticipated. Humanity's unexpected victories began to echo across the galaxy, reaching the ears of other species long subdued by the Empire's tyranny. These were species that had endured generations of oppression, their will to fight buried under the weight of the Empire's brutal rule. But the news of a small, seemingly insignificant race challenging the might of the Empire sparked something long dormant, a glimmer of hope. It started small, covert messages of solidarity, offers of intelligence from alien networks that had remained hidden from the Empire's watchful eyes, and whispers of support in the shadowy corners of the galaxy. A few of the more daring species, those who had nothing left to lose, went further, providing resources and even sending a few soldiers to join the human cause. These early allies were cautious, testing the waters, but their involvement marked the beginning of something much larger. As humanity's resistance continued to gain momentum, the ripple effects spread wider. Stories of human tenacity and cunning reached even the most distant star systems, inspiring species that had long believed resistance was futile. The idea that the Empire could be challenged, that its invincibility was a lie, began to take root. Gradually, the rebellion grew beyond humanity's control, evolving into a broader movement that spanned multiple worlds. Uprisings began to erupt across the galaxy, some small and isolated, others more organized and strategic. These were not coordinated by humanity, but they were undeniably inspired by them. Each act of defiance, each strike against the Empire, added fuel to the fire. Humanity, once seen as the galaxy's underdog, now found itself at the center of a growing rebellion, not just fighting for their own survival but for the freedom of countless other species as well. The diverse species joining the rebellion brought with them unique skills and knowledge that greatly expanded the resistance's capabilities. What had begun as a scattered series of insurgent acts started to coalesce into a coordinated effort. The humans, with their talent for unconventional warfare, became the de facto leaders, but they were quick to integrate the strengths of their new allies. Alien species with advanced technological expertise helped improve human weaponry and defenses, while others, with deep knowledge of the Empire's tactics and weaknesses, provided invaluable strategic insights. Together, they planned more significant operations, targeting critical infrastructure, communications, and supply lines that were essential to the Empire's control. These joint efforts began to achieve results that none of the species could have accomplished on their own, turning the tide of the conflict in their favor. As the rebellion grew, the Empire's response became increasingly desperate. The once all-powerful force that had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist was now being challenged on multiple fronts. The Empire's leadership, accustomed to quick and decisive victories, found themselves in uncharted territory. Their attempts to crush the rebellion through sheer force only served to further alienate the population, driving more species to join the cause. In their desperation, the Empire began to resort to more brutal and indiscriminate tactics, targeting civilian populations and entire planets in an effort to break the spirit of the rebellion. But these actions only deepened the resolve of the rebels. The more the Empire lashed out, the stronger the resistance became. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The Empire, once thought invincible, was now being pushed to its limits. The rebellion, with humanity at its heart, had grown into a force that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy was no longer under the Empire's control. It was now a battleground where the fight for freedom was being waged by species who had once only dreamed of such a possibility. Humanity, through its courage and resilience, had ignited a spark that was quickly becoming a wildfire, threatening to consume the Empire and usher in a new era of hope and liberation for the entire galaxy. The rebellion had reached its tipping point, and the galaxy braced for what would be the final, decisive confrontation. The combined forces of humanity and their allies, now united under a single banner of resistance, prepared to launch a massive, coordinated assault on the heart of the Galactic Empire. This was the moment they had been building toward. The Empire's capital, a fortress world bristling with defenses, was their target. The plan was audacious, a multi-front assault designed to overwhelm the Empire's forces, cutting off their reinforcements and breaking their will to fight. The build-up to the battle was intense, with every species contributing its best warriors, ships, and strategies. Communication lines buzzed with final plans and strategies, each contingent knowing that failure was not an option. This was the last stand, the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. As the assault began, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The Empire's forces, though vast and formidable, were stretched thin, trying to fend off attacks on multiple fronts. The rebels, using the element of surprise and their superior coordination, struck hard and fast. The skies above the capital were ablaze with the light of countless battles, as fleets clashed and soldiers fought desperately on the ground. Humanity played a critical role in this chaotic, all-or-nothing offensive. Their guerrilla tactics, honed in the earlier stages of the rebellion, proved invaluable in penetrating the Empire's defenses. Human commandos executed daring raids deep within the capital, targeting key infrastructure and command centers. Despite facing overwhelming odds and sustaining heavy casualties, their unyielding determination kept the fight alive. When the battle seemed to teeter on the brink of collapse, it was humanity's resilience and ingenuity that turned the tide, time and again. Their ability to adapt, to strike at the Empire's most vulnerable points, became the linchpin of the rebellion's strategy. After hours of brutal combat, the cracks in the Empire's defenses began to show. The once mighty force that had ruled the galaxy with absolute authority was now faltering, its leadership in disarray. The rebel forces, emboldened by their success and driven by the belief that victory was within reach, pushed forward with renewed vigor. The final blow came as the Empire's central command structure crumbled, its leaders either captured or killed, and its forces scattered across the galaxy, leaderless and directionless. The capital fell, and with it, the Empire's iron grip on the galaxy was broken. The once feared juggernaut was finally defeated, its power shattered, and the galaxy was free at last. In the aftermath, humanity was hailed as the key to the rebellion's success, their role in the victory undeniable. As the dust settled and the fires of war began to cool, the galaxy turned to the task of rebuilding. The scars of the conflict were deep, but there was hope for a new beginning. Humanity, once underestimated and overlooked, emerged as a symbol of resistance and resilience. They were no longer seen as a minor player on the galactic stage, but as the ones who had stood up to the greatest power the galaxy had ever known and won. This victory marked the dawn of a new era, one characterized by cooperation and freedom rather than fear and oppression. The galaxy, united in its desire for peace, began to forge a new path forward, with humanity at its heart, guiding the way toward a brighter future for all.